Hello, my name is Celine Yaffe, and welcome to Talk Law Podcast, a law podcast for anyone interested in learning the truth about what being a lawyer is like. Joining me for this episode is Lara Foster, a partner at Fenwick and West law firm and specializes in a variety of subjects, including tech and finance-focused law. First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. It is such an honor to have this conversation with you, especially because of all the amazing work you've done. So starting off, what made you want to pursue law? What started your interest in what you do today?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here and to chat with you today. I was not one of those people that knew I wanted to be a lawyer early on. I talk to a lot of people who say, oh, in high school, I knew I wanted to be a lawyer, or before high school, it just wasn't the case for me. I didn't make a decision to go to law school until my mid-20s. And it was, I grew up, I didn't have lawyers in my immediate family. I didn't have lawyers in my social circles. People always told me, oh, you should go to law school. You'll be really good at this. And I was like, oh, I don't know. And I just had in my head this image of lawyers being stuck behind a big, dark brown desk with mountains of paper and just buried in contracts all day long, and or fighting in court all day long. And it just wasn't that wasn't something that excited me or that I wanted to go chase and do. And so after I finished my undergraduate degree, I was connected to someone who knew my family, and they said, well, you know what, you should come try it out in Silicon Valley, because it's different in Silicon Valley. Working with entrepreneurs, working with founders, it will change your mind and you'll be excited to do it. That person was right. I came to Silicon Valley fresh out of undergrad and took a job as a paralegal at a prominent Silicon Valley law firm, and worked there for a couple of years on venture capital, incorporations with some founders for really early stage companies, and I loved it. And so 2.5 years later, I went to law school, and the rest is history, I guess.
That is so interesting. On the topic of law school, what are your thoughts on it? Where did you go, and how did it shape how you view law?
Yeah, so I went to Santa Clara Law School, which is right here in Silicon Valley, and the school is, one of the it's focused on technology law practice, just based on where it is, and the people who go there, the professors who are there, it's very much focused on teaching people the skills that they need to practice law across the country, but with a focus on technology and IP, and now it's heavily focused on teaching privacy law, which has become a massive focus in this area. It's a small school. There were a couple hundred people in my class, but which is, believe it or not, small for law schools. Some law schools are 3 or 4 times the size of that. And it was just, I learned so much. It was the classes were intimate enough that you got to know people really well. You got to know the professors. You really you learned how to think in a very different way.
That is awesome. Yeah. Wow. It's crazy to me that 300 people in the law class is like considered small. That's crazy. What made you later want to choose the law you practice today? Oh, well, I suppose that goes back to the Santa Clara, because well, what mainly do you practice today?
Yeah, so my practice today is very, very similar to what I was doing as a paralegal, just in terms of the types of clients and types of work we do. And as I said, I loved my job as a paralegal and loved the type of work I was doing there. So I went to law school with a very sort of set goal of graduating and continuing to do that type of thing and work with similar people. So when I was looking for a job in law school and for after I graduated, I kind of had a very sort of defined idea of what I wanted to do. Right now, the firm I work at is we service technology, life science, venture-backed companies, and my role as a corporate lawyer, I work with founders, anything from sort of one guy in a garage with an idea all the way up to big publicly traded companies like Facebook, and we work with other big public companies like that.
Wow. Yeah.
So it's a wide range, right? When you think about people who have, who are just bootstrapping and they're just coding away somewhere and trying to figure out what their business is going to be, all the way up to those really large, successful companies. Mm-hmm. And my day to day is working with anywhere from just that single founder and helping them sort of progress their business, all the way up to working with lawyer number 10 on a legal team in some big, massive organization. And we guide them day to day on a wide range of corporate matters. And that could be fundraising, that could be employment matters, that could be selling the company if the company is going to be acquired, taking a company public. It's a wide variety of work, and that's why I really enjoy it.
That's so interesting. I mean, it's great because you get to do like everything, I guess, like literally everything. That's awesome. And what has been your favorite part of what you do? What has been a rewarding experience in a commonly referred to as like an unrewarding profession?
It's the thing that I enjoy the most is helping people, helping these founders, helping CEOs like realize their dreams, realize their business, seeing a company go from something really, really small and just a PowerPoint and an idea to a product that's being launched or sold, or company being successfully acquired by another bigger company, or being on the front page of the New York Times because it's so revolutionary, or whatever that milestone is, that dream, watching founders execute on that dream and chase it and make it so, and in many cases change the way people in the world function. Facebook is a great example. I didn't work with Facebook when it was started,
Mark Zuckerberg in a garage. Yeah.
Exactly, but he was, and think about the next iteration of something like Facebook and how it's changed the world so much and the way we operate. Like, seeing that is just so fun. And as the lawyers in these situations, we have a front row seat to so much of that. We sit in the board meetings, we help them negotiate the most important transactions. So much of what I do as a corporate lawyer is not about reading and interpreting the law. It's providing business advice to many of these founders, and it's fun. It's challenging. It's different every single day. It's quite the opposite of unrewarding. If I think that's the word you use to describe. But we hear it all the time, and that's part of why I didn't want to be a lawyer early on in my life. And it took sort of seeing this type of law as to sort of change my mind.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. I apologize for calling it unrewarding. And are you allowed to talk about cases that you've done in the past?
I can talk about some of the public ones. So, I already mentioned Facebook. When I was a first-year attorney at my firm, I had the privilege of working on Facebook's IPO. My firm represented Facebook through their IPO, and I was one of the junior lawyers working on that matter at the time. And so that was one of my sort of first big projects that I worked on, and I still work with Facebook today. It's been a really fascinating client to work with over the years. Another one which I always like to talk about, it's super fun. There's a company out there called King Digital, and they developed the Candy Crush game, and a number of the other digital, online digital gaming companies like that. So we worked with them for a number of years. When they became a public company, they were later acquired by Activision Blizzard. So I worked with them, and what was super fun about that one was, well, first of all, they were headquartered in London, so a whole bunch of travel to London, which is fun. I grew up in the UK, so it was an opportunity to not only go back to the UK for work, but to see some family and friends while I was there, which was a nice perk.
Oh, that's awesome.
But also, going to an office of a company that makes a game like Candy Crush, as you might be able to imagine, you just walk in and it just feels like you're at Disneyland. It's just a really cool experience. So it was nothing, the things that stick out and I remember about that transaction are not necessarily the legal aspects, which were interesting. They were complicated because it was cross-border. It was just a big company with a lot of legal complexity. Super interesting, super fun. But then just the client and what they were developing and the sort of mission of the company and the goals and their sort of core values and beliefs were memorable.
Wow, that does sound super interesting. I know that half of America was like in love with Candy Crush, so that's super interesting. And what is your least favorite part of what you do, or something that you regret that you like that you did in your law path?
Yeah, it's not something least favorite. I think it's a challenge about the profession that we are in. When you are a lawyer, you work in client service. Mm-hmm. And so that means, and that's the reason we do it. Most lawyers do it because we enjoy providing client service. We enjoy that dynamic. But something that comes along with client service is that you're at the beck and call of your clients, and you can never really control when they might need something or when the next emergency will come up. And clients depend on us for so many things that are critical to them as individuals, as their businesses. And that's why I love doing it, because I like being someone that my clients depend on. But that often means, having to take phone calls late at night, or having to drop things on the weekend and help them. And that's something hard to adjust to sometimes. And doing what I do at a firm where I do it, and with the caliber of clients that I work with, means that that is a trade-off, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. I enjoy doing what I do, but that is one of the harder things, is just getting into that mindset of, what does the client need? How can I make sure they have it when they need it? And how can I provide the best possible service to them so that they can continue to depend on me?
No, I bet. Wow, that yeah, you don't really see that. I feel like that side of law in like movies or TV shows. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what advice would you give anyone wanting to pursue a similar career path, like Silicon Valley law?
So I think I always tell people, take your time to figure out whether or not you want to go to law school. So whether that's trying it out as a paralegal, or taking some internships before going to law school, that's super valuable. Whether that's in your summer breaks during college, or for a few years between college and law school, that's super valuable. But also when you're in law school, like, take advantage of all of the opportunities available to you. There's so many different practice areas out there, and I fell into something that I really enjoyed before law school, and so I knew going into law school what I wanted to do on the other side. But I don't think that's true for most people. And there's so many different types of law, whether it's corporate, litigation, tax, family law, civil rights, immigration. There's so many different types of law, and you've just got to learn about them and hear about them and figure out where your passion is. So, because you've described legal practice as it can be, unrewarding, and that's not an uncommon way to describe it. And I think that's often because people aren't practicing in an area where their passion lies. And I think if you can take the time to figure out what you're passionate about or where you want to be, then it's extremely rewarding. And I think that's so I think my advice there is take the time to figure out what it is you want to do, so that when you're there, you can really enjoy it. And don't be afraid to make a mistake, or to pick the wrong area and have to pivot later. People go to law school, people come out of law school and spend a couple of years in a certain area and pivot all the time. And that's fine. Like, you don't have to make a decision on day one. And it's, even within my firm, we all service these technology companies and venture-backed startup companies, but there's 10 plus different practice areas within my firm alone, and we all sort of service the same clients, but we all service very differently, and we collaborate on some things, and sometimes we're working separately. And it's legal practice is not at all one-dimensional.
Yeah, definitely. No, that is so true. And I love the way that you phrase everything. You're super eloquent. I mean, but I guess that's your job. I guess that is your job. here are some questions that our listeners can get to know you a little better behind your profession. So who's your favorite musician?
Oh, so we listen to a lot of oldies, you know, in our house. So here's all of these answers will be understood well when you know that I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. So the music we listen to in our house is very all over the spectrum, I would say. If I had to choose to go to see live music, and I haven't unfortunately seen a lot of live music in the last couple of years because of the world we live in. Yeah. But my favorite live music is a duo called Rodrigo and Gabriela. Mm-hmm. And they're a husband and a wife duo. They are incredible live. I highly recommend it. And so I listen to a lot of them when I'm at my desk too. It's kind of like it's heavy rock music, but it's just got this great
like vibe to it.
Yeah, great vibe. And I could listen and I kind of get in my groove when I'm working, and mm-hmm. I love it. So highly recommend that. I first saw them at a festival in San Francisco, mm-hmm. and then have just tried to see them live whenever they're back in the Bay Area. Great live act.
Awesome. Yeah. So. And what is your favorite movie? I know, really, really tough questions. This is the part where like everybody I interview always gets like super nervous. They're like, I don't know.
I know, I'm kind of embarrassed to say it. My favorite movie of all time, and it's been my favorite since I was a child, is Pretty Woman.
Okay, it's so good. I mean, nothing beats it, I feel like.
No.
Like Julia Roberts, I mean, so good.
Yeah, it's a feel good movie.
Definitely. And what is your favorite TV show if you have one?
Right now I'm rewatching Schitt's Creek. I watched it the first time through and I just couldn't get enough the first time, so I'm rewatching the whole thing right now.
It's so good. I feel it can never get too much praise. I think that's all. Again, thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. It has been so interesting to learn about you and what you do, and I really appreciate you taking the time.
Of course, a pleasure to be here, and thanks for taking the time to chat with me.
Again, thank you so much to Lara Foster. I wanted to bring a little more to this podcast and make it more about law history and important law events. I've decided to make a new segment where I talk about a recent case and its effects on our judicial and social systems. The case we're going to talk about today is Otto versus City of Boca Raton. Conversion therapy is a controversial practice in which a person's sexual orientation is trying to be changed by others. It is an extreme form of therapy and typically happens to minors. There are laws currently being litigated for conversion therapy to be banned for treatment on minors in all 50 states. In Otto versus Boca Raton, we see counters against that, stating that banning it is a violation of the First Amendment. If we use this logic, the First Amendment could be used as a weapon against regulations in professional spaces and conduct. In 2017, the city of Boca Raton passed local ordinances that would make it illegal for therapists, both licensed and unlicensed, to practice conversion therapy and changing patient sexuality. A few therapists that practiced this, including a doctor named Robert Otto, filed a claim stating that not only did this violate the First Amendment, but that the treatment produced no harm to minors and their safety. After a lengthy legal battle, the 11th Circuit of Appeals ruled that conversion therapy did pose a risk to youth and it would continue to be banned. This is a great outcome. If conversion therapy continued to be used in practices, more and more LGBTQ teens would be forced into them, putting them at risk for mental health issues, and which would end up causing our progression on LGBTQ issues to go backwards. Thank you so much for listening, and make sure to follow us on Instagram at TalkLawPodcast and send us an email at talklawpodcast@gmail.com.